Okay, so there's a lot going on in the world right now, right? And with all these conflicts flaring up, there's one huge question that I think is on everyone's mind. It's a big one, with consequences we really can't afford to ignore.
Could all of this actually become World War III? You see it all over the internet. You hear people talking about it. It's a pretty scary thought, and that's exactly what we're going to dive into today.
So, let's just get this out of the way right up front. The short answer? For now, the probability is actually low. Phew, right? Now, don't get me wrong, the situation is super serious, but most experts agree that an all-out global war, well, it isn't the most likely thing to happen. At least not yet.
All right, so to really get our heads around this, here's what we're going to cover. We'll start with that big World War III question. Then we'll look at 3 reasons things could escalate. After that, it's all about India's strategy of neutrality and what their action plan would be. Then we get personal. What's the impact on you? And finally, the big one. Whose side will India actually take?
Okay, so first things first, why isn't this already a world war? Well, for now, it's what you'd call a regional conflict. And the main reason for that is pretty simple. The big players, the major world powers, are all being very careful to avoid a direct fight with each other. Sure, they're involved, but it's more through, let's say, support and proxies. That's what's keeping the whole thing from boiling over.
But, and this is a big but, that could all change in a heartbeat. Low probability doesn't mean zero probability. There are basically 3 major tripwires, 3 triggers that could turn this thing from a regional mess into a global nightmare. So we really need to understand what those are.
So, trigger number 1 is the most obvious one. It's the direct involvement of the major powers. I'm talking boots on the ground. If the armies of the US, Russia, China, or the NATO alliance, that's the big North Atlantic military group, if any of them jump into the fight directly, well, that's a game changer. The whole dynamic shifts, and that's probably your ticket to a world war right there.
Okay, the second trigger. This is the one that keeps people up at night. The nightmare scenario. Nuclear weapons. Just look at the top players here. Russia, the USA, China. They have almost all of them. If any country, decides to use even one, just one, the consequences are honestly unimaginable, catastrophic, unpredictable. There aren't words for it. And that brings us to the third trigger. This is where the whole thing could just spiral out of control. We're talking about the entire Middle East joining the fight. If you see countries like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Turkey, or Jordan getting dragged in directly, that's a huge red flag. The conflict would just swallow the whole region, creating this geopolitical black hole that would pull everyone else in. The global impact would be massive. Okay, so with all that scary stuff on the table, let's pivot. Where does India fit into all of this? And that really brings us to the absolute core of India's foreign policy, something it's held on to for a long, long time. Its strategy of neutrality. Yeah, friendship with all, enmity with none. That one sentence pretty much says it all, doesn't it? This isn't something new. It goes way back, all the way to the Cold War and the non-aligned movement. The whole idea is to be on good terms with everyone, avoid taking sides. It's all about looking out for India's own interests first without getting sucked into somebody else's fight. But here's the thing you have to understand. Being neutral doesn't mean just sitting on your hands and doing nothing. Absolutely not. India has a very clear, very practical action plan ready to go if things get worse. It's all about protecting its people and its interests. And why is that plan so important? Look at this number. 9 million. That's how many Indians are working in the Middle East. 9 million people. So you can see why their safety is priority number 1, right? That single fact, more than anything else, is what drives India's entire emergency response. So what does the plan look like? It's basically 4 key steps. Step 1, get our people home. Launch massive evacuation missions, just like we saw with Operation Ganga and Operation Kaveri. Step 2, talk. Use all diplomatic channels to push for peace. Step 3, secure the energy. A war would disrupt oil, so India would immediately start looking for new sources, maybe more from Russia, the US, or Africa. And finally, step 4, be ready. The Army, Navy, and Air Force would all go on high alert to protect India's borders and its interests. It's a comprehensive plan. Okay, we've talked about geopolitics and military plans, but let's bring this home. What does any of this mean for you, for your wallet? Because a major war, even one happening on the other side of the world, is absolutely going to hit home.
It's going to affect the daily life and finances of pretty much everyone in India.
Let's break it down. First up, petrol. If Middle Eastern oil gets disrupted, you could see prices at the pump jumping to 120, maybe even 150 rupees. Ouch. Then there's gold. In crazy times, people want something safe, something real, so they buy gold. That pushes the price way up. The share market? It hates instability, so you can bet it would take a nosedive. And finally, the rupee's value would probably weaken. Bottom line, a global war comes with a very local price tag.
Which leads us to the final question, and maybe the trickiest one of all. If it really came down to it, if India was forced to choose, whose side would it take? The answer isn't simple, because it's all tied up in this incredibly complex web of relationships India has around the world. I mean, just think about this balancing act. On one hand, you have Israel, a super important partner for defense, tech, drones, missiles, all that stuff. At the exact same time, you have Iran, a key partner for the Chabahar port and for oil. And then you throw the USA into the mix, one of India's biggest strategic partners overall. You see the problem? Picking one side could blow up the relationships with the other two. It's a diplomatic tightrope. So when you lay it all out like that, the answer becomes pretty clear. India will not, and really cannot, openly support any single country. It just can't afford to. The whole point of its foreign policy is to make sure it never has to make that impossible choice. And that's really the main takeaway here. India's strategy has two parts that work together. Part 1, on the surface, stay neutral. Part 2, under the surface, do absolutely everything necessary to protect its own interests, its people, its economy, its security. The neutrality makes it possible to achieve the second goal. But this whole situation leaves us with a really big question to think about. In a world that's so connected, where everything affects everyone, can a big country like India truly stay neutral when the world is on fire? And even if it can for a while, how long can you walk that tightrope before the pressure just gets to be too much? That is the real question for the future.